Welcome to Frequency. I'm Chuck Gose.
And I'm Jenni Field.
Frequency is your go-to for real talk about comms, culture, and employee experience beyond the buzzwords and straight to what matters. Jenni, this is one of the things that matters to me this week as people are listening to this. Prior to it, we were both in Toronto for your comms reboot, which I just wanted to share with you. As someone who has put on their own share of events, that was remarkable. It was truly remarkable event. And I think the part that I found remarkable about it was it seemed like people left more energized than when they arrived. And I just wanted to give you your flowers for running a very successful event.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it's definitely the model of the event where they set the agenda and everyone has a role to play. It seems to be a lasting theme. Everyone I do, they say I leave feeling much more inspired and energized. And I love that. I loved it when someone said at the end, like I was starting to really struggle. You know, we're often small teams and they were just saying I'd sort of lost my mojo, but I feel really sort of invigorated after this. So it was good. It was just nice to hang out in person, really, as well. It's good.
And I want to point out too, I don't hand out fake compliments.
No, you don't.
So I don't. So when so you know it's real.
I feel like we're like, it's like the Simon Cowell of comms.
Oh, you're not taking the Taylor Swift thing from me. You're not, nope.
Taking it.
You're not switching celebrities on me. I wanted to set this up a little bit because you mentioned it. It had been a while since we had seen each other in person. And I was trying to trace it back. Was it Attune London last time I was there that I think I saw you in person? Was that it?
I think so. When was that? Was 2023?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I think it was. I think that was Attune London.
Because we've got that
So it was
photo
great.
where I'm kind of looking up at you adoringly.
That's true. This is one of my favorite photos. But it was great seeing you in person. And yet you published on Instagram your top 6 photos from June, and I didn't make the cut.
No. But you got a whole reel. It got a whole reel. That's more important than a story.
I don't remember. I just know I see here's my 6 in June or whatever Instagram calls it. And I mean, I don't know how the other facilitators are taking it, the Came to Comes reboot. But anyway, I just...
wow, just you wait till my top 6 in July.
You just, you like to keep me in place, which I appreciate. So with that, Jenni, let's move along to the stories you've selected today.
So I have a lovely selection of stories today. We're going to talk about the summer slump in the office and what that means for internal comms teams. I saw a great Instagram video the other week, which was explaining the different reasons people have worked across different generations. So it talks about the motivations, and I really want to dive into that. There's been a move by the Global Alliance to bring in some professionalism around ethical AI. So I want to talk about that because that came up in Comms Reboot as well. But I'm going to kick us off with a small soapbox moment about the return to office challenge, because I feel like since we've started this podcast, we must have talked about the return to office or the RTO challenge in nearly, not every episode, but it's definitely showed up as a consistent theme. And there was a news story this week in Business Insider about the major companies requiring people to come back to the office. And it talked about even pulling back from hybrid work, so going to more in-office days, with people like Amazon, JP Morgan, AT&T, Goldman Sachs, TikTok, all now moving to this sort of full 5-day attendance. Now, I was having a look at the article, and for a few of them, it talks about reasons that they gave in the memos, and it often talks about collaboration and connection. Some of them talk about career development and culture, but they're all talking about this need to sort of be together in order to do that. And there's a real mix for employees, which we've talked about in terms of the sort of petitions and things to not want to do that. And I know you have sort of been quite strong on I don't know why we have to go back to an office. But I sort of feel like I'm getting bored of this conversation now because there is definitely a need to be in person with people to create a connection and to get stuff done. And I'm all for hybrid and choice and flexibility. Like I'm there for the choice. But I also do understand this. We need to be together in order to get stuff done. Just this week, I spoke to somebody where we were having a real issue with a client project. And they said, I'm actually in the office more so that I can go and talk to people so I can get stuff done because people can just ignore emails too much. So I'm going to go downstairs and talk to that person and then we can get it moving. So I suppose my question on this is, do we just let this go? Because we've talked about it now for 14 weeks on and off, and it's moving in the direction of going back to offices. Like, do we just have to let it go? It's not going to go away. Do we just accept it and move on?
Jenny, do you think I let anything go?
No, never.
No. So that's the answer. No, we can't just let it go because employees haven't let it go. There's still people that it's not the choice in the hybrid part. It is either the mandates. It is the lack of flexibility. And that's their plan, Jenny, is to force it on people so they feel like, well, I guess I don't have a choice.
Hmm.
So I should just let it go. So no, that is not in my DNA to let it go. Maybe at some point I will be exhausted of talking about it, but at this point I am not, because I think there's too much at stake here when you look at whether you want to hang your hat on productivity or engagement or culture or trust or all those things. I think the story you just gave is a great example of that person choosing,
Mm-hmm.
I need to be more productive, so therefore I am going to
True.
go talk to these people in person. I agree. So much more can get done in person, but it's this forced mandate. It's you will be here from 8:30 till 5 o'clock, Monday through Friday. We have to be in office to get things done. We have to be here all this time because we know that's not true. It's setting expectations. I think improvements can be made around what does hybrid or flexible mean. I think the companies who are doing that responsibly are the ones that are doing it well. But the Monday through Friday mandates are way too old school, in my opinion.
Do you think though that there's that kind of forceful swing the other way to find that will eventually find a balance? So point one is, are we swinging so far the 5-day week so that it forces a better balance? But the other thing I was just thinking about when you were talking was, I remember my first job in London and my hours on my contract were, I think from memory, 8:30 till 6, Monday to Friday. And I was fine with that because I had, geared myself up for a London commute, which for me was 90 minutes each way. And I pretty much did that for 7 years. But in my first or second week, I remember culturally it was quite different. And I was able to do hybrid. So I worked from home on Fridays. It was very relaxed, that you didn't have to be in the office for meetings. You could go and have coffee for meetings across the road. And so it was very different to the contract that I had. And I wonder if there is something in this sort of mandate is almost like the contract, but the reality might be quite different over time. And I just wonder if we're just figuring that out to get that balance back, maybe.
This shouldn't feel like a negotiation tactic. It should be like what's best for our employees. It shouldn't be we're going to make it worse for them so that they then come to the middle a little bit more because they realize, well, it's not as bad as it could have been, so it's better. That feels like a horrible way to work with employees from a leadership standpoint. So to answer your original question, Jenny, I'm not letting it go. I don't see other people letting it go. So you're just going to have to ride with us here for a little bit longer.
Okay. I'm really interested to see where we're going to be in 6 months' time with it and see what's happening. So when we get to that episode in 6 months, we'll see where we're at.
It's going to be a second verse, same as the first. Jenny.
Right. The next article I want to touch on is from the team at Reagan, where they were talking about keeping the momentum over summer. So how internal comms pros can maintain engagement in slower times. And the article talks about the summer vacations and the holiday breaks that create that sort of lull internally. And internal comms, can't just stop operating over summer. So they're looking at the different advice around what we could do. And they use one of my favorite phrases, which is focusing on people over processes. So they're talking about stories about employees, small wins, respecting time off, using sort of mobile friendly formats so that people can access things when they're on the move. And it really got me thinking about this sort of summer holiday vacation time, because it's very different in different parts of the world. I know that people that work maybe sort of over near sort of Sweden and that way, they often shut down for the whole of summer and it just sort of stops. And then they come back in September. For us in the UK, it's a bit of a mix, but there's always this. And I found myself doing it this week of sending emails saying, do we want to catch up before the summer holiday season starts? Like, oh my God, everyone's going to stop working. But I also think that sometimes it's a bit of a myth. As a business, we definitely don't slow down over summer and we can be incredibly busy over July and August. And I don't ever remember feeling when I worked in house like, oh, I need to adjust my comms because it's slower times and it's summer holiday, because that's not the case for everybody. So my question on this as I was reading it is this just a myth? And have we just told ourselves this is what happens around the world in summer months? Or is it really geography dependent? And is it something that internal comms pros really need to worry about?
I would say worry no, but I do want to point out one thing, because we did promise on this podcast real talk about
Hmm.
these things. I would like to point out we are 14 episodes in. This is the first time in those 14 episodes that we have brought in an article from Reagan as
Hmm.
part of that. That's intentional on my part.
I
Anyone who
know.
knows me knows I'm not a fan of Reagan, so I'm just going to let it go there. However, on this topic, it's real, but not in the way that people think about it. So geographically, I do think there is a huge difference. I
Hmm.
think especially here in the States versus a lot of countries in Europe, where you do see people take very long holidays. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. That would be like a lifetime here in the
Yeah.
US if someone took that long of a break. Even 1 week, people were a little nervous and antsy about getting back to work. But what I see, I guess the myth part for me is, I think it's people think like, oh, there's a slowdown. I don't think it's a slowdown. To your point, I think it's people's attention shifts just differently. So they might not be as hyper focused on work during this time of year as they are and other times of year. And I was thinking back to when my kids were little, summer was chaotic. Like, you've got kids out of school, you've got to find camps to get to. These camps, you have to drop them off at 10 a.m. and pick them up at 3 p.m. And I'm like, who operates in that amount of time? Like, those aren't working hours for a lot of parents and adults and people that take care of children. So I think it's people's attention is just shifting to different ways, but it's not really a slowdown. People might be slower to respond by email or Slack or whatever that, or Teams, but it doesn't mean they have slowed down. It's just their attention has shifted. So I think what should a communicator do about this, I think is what you were kind of alluding to, which is this is a chance to maybe have some lighter communication, have some more fun communication, maybe experiment with some different communication styles during this time or types of content you want to play with. So use that as a bit of a summer sandbox. Take that play mentality into it and use this time knowing people's attention might be shifted in other areas. Use this as a time to surprise and delight and maybe create some
Mm.
new types of content or new messages that might draw their attention in a lighter way.
Mm. I think I would be using that time to look at my sort of planning and strategy. So while it's quite like if it is quieter in terms of I haven't got
Mm-hmm.
as many campaigns launching or I haven't got as many stakeholders that need my attention, how do I, to your point, shift my focus and attention into other places that will help me kind of review the first half, look at the second half, and kind of replan that a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not good at I'm going to use the phrase public play because I don't know what else to say. But as you were just saying then, like play with stuff and see what happens. Like I would struggle with that internally without having some kind of rigor around that about what I was doing. Like I just know how my brain works. It would be like, well,
I
what are
thought
we
you
doing?
said you were fun at parties.
Yeah, that's so different. I mean, if that's what you think fun at parties is, whenever we get to party, it's going to be really weird. But I think there's something to be said for thinking about your strategy, but I also like for those people that are really happy being very creative and fun and using that time to play in the sandbox, then maybe it is time for that as well and doing things a bit differently over the summer.
It's like let's have fun, but here are the rules. Here's the
Yes.
rigor. Here's the
Yes.
structure. But
Yes.
you gotta have fun just in this little space.
Yeah. I'm like Monica from Friends. That's where I've gone there. But I am fun at parties. I'll bring the cups and you bring the ice. Right. The next article, it's not an article, it was an Instagram post that I came across when I was having a 10-minute scroll through Reels the other day. And it was two gentlemen talking about a retention problem. So it looked like it was shot from a sort of conference exhibition stand type thing. And this gentleman comes over and he says, I've got a real issue with retention and people are leaving my organization and I want to stop that from happening. So I'm thinking about doing some sort of retainership or something that will keep them in the business for sort of 3 years. And the other gentleman's quite quick to say, that just won't work. That's not the right move to do. And he goes on to explain that the world of business has seen 3 generations. So he talks about the Industrial Revolution, the Information Revolution, and the fact that now we're in the social revolution. And he talks about the Industrial Revolution is where people took a job for survival. So they were working in places that they were just never going to leave because they wanted to survive. So they stayed because that survival piece was what was important. There were less opportunities then. So that's what kind of made people stick around. And he says that that's sort of the grandparents of the workforce today. Then we have the information revolution, where we saw the boom of IT companies and brands building. And the workforce at that time came to work for standard of living. So to get a good enough salary to pay a mortgage, to have the car, to fund children's education, all of that stuff. And he talks about the fact that loyalty was reduced in that generation, but at the same time, loyalty never really existed. It was just that there weren't as many opportunities as we now have. So after 2008, he talks about the fact that the information revolution died because now you can get information everywhere. You can learn stuff on YouTube, you can get access to it all the time. So now we have the social revolution, which means that we're not worried about survival because that's been taken care of. We're not worried about standard of living because that's been taken care of. Today, it's about the quality of life, and that's different to the standard of life. And in some ways, this links us back to this return to office discussion we were having. But he was saying that if you try and bind them with a contract or I'll cut your pay, they'll just go and find another job, which sounds delightful at the moment when the job market is quite tough and not quite true. But there's that opportunity shift that is out there. And what he's talking about is that quality of life means the quality of the workplace, the quality of the job, the quality of the environment, the quality of the opportunities for learning and rewards. So he says, unless you have a mechanism for that, you will always grapple with the retention issue. Now, I loved the sort of simplicity of that, of these kind of 3 buckets and the reasons for work that sat within those. So my question for you is about what can communicators and HR teams do with this? Is there something around having this knowledge or this perspective on this that could impact your employee experience strategy or your internal comms strategy? How does this need to play into the bigger culture piece and how we communicate and engage our staff?
Yeah, I agree with you. I liked the very simple yet very understandable framework that he walked people through. And I think it shows an interesting dynamic in that employee-employer relationship. And my biggest takeaway, which might have been yours as well, was his point of view around saying loyalty didn't exist, but also just asking the question, did it ever exist? I think that's a good question for organizations to ask, that you might have thought somebody was loyal, but just because they showed up every day, were they really loyal? And so for me, that was the biggest takeaway. So I don't know from a comm standpoint if there's a lot here. I look at it more from the HR side of the house, where I
Mhm.
wonder if I worked at that guy's company and he wants to give a retention bonus, and the other guy was like, no, don't do it. I'd be like, zip it. Like, if he wants to give us money for sticking around, So why not both? Why can't you, instead of a retention bonus, why isn't it a celebration? It's like
Yeah.
when you see companies, I love it when I see companies who offer perks like the sabbaticals.
Hmm.
And after you've been here 5 years, 7 years, whatever the number is, you get that many months to kind of go and explore, and your job is protected and all those things. So I think celebrating tenure, I think, still does have some value to it, and recognizing the people who maybe it's not loyalty, but more commitment.
Mm.
Maybe that's the way to look at it, is, are people committed to the company? And maybe it's into the semantics of it, but I think
Yeah.
people can feel committed to the work they're doing and maybe not necessarily loyal to this brand or leadership or the company, because we're seeing loyalty play out in very dangerous ways here in the US, where threats are being made about loyalty or not. This is outside of the workplace. But is that a behavior that's now being taught of, oh, if you're not loyal to us, then you're not worth anything
Mm.
to me. And so I think commitment would be a more interesting conversation, I think, to have.
Yeah. And as you were talking then about loyalty versus commitment, I've then gone versus engagement. So actually, is there something that's what used to be loyalty is now what we talk about as how engaged people are? And you and I think, feel quite similarly about engagement numbers and the meaninglessness of the percentage. But actually, if you were saying, well, this workforce is really loyal, way back when, would that be the equivalent of saying this workforce is really engaged? And actually, is that just a language shift? And there's something in there for me to go away and think about around loyalty, commitment, engagement, and whether there's been this just sort of language evolution of that, but we're all talking about the same thing, but we just still don't quite know how to how to measure that. And if years ago the measurement was you just didn't leave, then
Right.
we're definitely not measuring engagement in that way now. So there's just something in that language piece for me that I just think is worth a deeper unpick, I think.
Hmm. Agreed.
So the final story today is about the Venice Pledge. So this has come out from the Global Alliance, who are a public relations and communication group that link very heavily to IABC and CIPR and other industry bodies. And they have refreshed, I would say also recently published, these responsible AI guiding principles. Now, this came up as a conversation at Comms Reboot about AI and tools. And then later on in the day, we had a conversation about the ethics around AI and whether or not you should say that something has been created by AI. And I loved your comment back when that came up in the room. And you said, what did you said? I just said, I've loved your comment and now I can't quote it back.
I had asked people about this, about if they'd ever disclosed when they'd ghostwritten an article
Yes.
for a leader, and they were like, no, never.
Yeah. Same thinking. I did love it. I just couldn't quite articulate it as well as you could. So they basically did this Venice pledge. And this has come out around committing to ethical human-centered AI use. And the framework defines responsible AI as a tool that supports rather than replaces that human creativity and judgment. So it talks about things like transparency, fairness, accuracy, accountability, but it's all around ethics, and it's all around some sort of core principles that just expand on those sort of themes. But I just wonder what this will do for the profession. I suppose my reflection of it was seeing it online and the sort of announcement of it, and then I saw some people saying I've signed up to this. Now I'm a member of CIPR. I was a board director and president for them, so I am a member there, and therefore I'm bound by an ethical code of conduct as part of that membership. So for me, this would just fall into that. It doesn't necessarily need to be a different thing. So I suppose I was thinking about the impact this has, which links to another Instagram reel I saw, which I won't talk about today. But it's what's the impact? We can all sign up to stuff and we can all go, this is lovely. But actually, what's what's this going to do for the profession is I suppose my question.
Nothing. Nothing. I Because I first heard about this at IEBC World Conference, and when I heard Venice Pledge, I've immediately in my head thought of the Sokovia Accords. Do you know what those are, Jenny? those are the things that the law set in stone in the Marvel movies that said the Avengers can and cannot do things, and it set all
Okay.
these rules around what. And I'm like, I feel like this is Covey Accords have more teeth in real life as this Venice Pledge does, and that's in a movie.
Yeah.
It sounds really good. It sounds good, but to me, it's just the sound good. I don't know what it actually. I don't think it's going to do anything. If you weren't ethical before, are you now ethical now because you're signing quote unquote this pledge?
Hmm.
Like, is that what you need to be ethical? Like, I don't know. I don't, this stuff, it sounds good on paper and it looks fancy, and I'm a happy skeptic on this stuff. And again, I take no offense to the fact that I was given employee skepticism as one of the topics at Comes Reboot, by the way, which I quite enjoyed, because also I think people are still learning,
Yeah.
and many of them aren't even in the conversation yet. And this, I don't know, is this like a body of bodies? Is this global alliance is like an association of associations, like whatever this is? Like, it just feels like a chest puffing exercise, and I don't really know what, if somebody signed this pledge and then they're deemed unethical, like, is there a court martial? Like, I don't know what happens. You get sent to Venice. If that's the case, I'm happy to sign it if it means you get to go to Venice. I just don't know what it means.
Yeah.
It sounds really negative as I'm ranting about it, because again, I don't know what it means.
But I think you and I are so focused on the impact piece. Like it, if this is just the beginning of it, what's going to come out of it? So if they're saying there's 7 core principles, is there then going to be training and development against those 7 that helps people understand how to use AI better if they just don't know? Because to your point, we're still learning and we're still doing stuff. So if one of those 7 is personal and organizational responsibility. Like, it comes back to, like, these are just big words, right? Like, what does that mean? What does that actually look like? And I haven't read the detail in it, but I saw the press release come out. I saw the bodies sign up to it. And I suppose I'm just interested in, how is this really going to help practitioners do use AI in a way that's going to benefit the organization? And I think that's still my question, and I still don't know. So
Because when I see the word pledge, I don't know if you know this or not, Jenny. I think they still do it in schools, but especially in elementary schools, kids would do the Pledge of Allegiance.
yeah.
So you would recite this thing in the mornings and look at the American
Yes.
flag and do this Pledge of
Yeah.
Allegiance. So it's not a Hollywood thing. It is real. And I think of it in the same way. Like, you're a grade school kid. Who else are you aligning to? Like, what is this teaching you? Like, it's a pledge. You're not going to pick up a gun and fight for your country when you're in second grade. Like, what is happening here? So pledges, I think, sound really good, but where's the teeth? Where's
Yeah.
the results? What does this really mean if everybody just puts their hand on some communications book and says I pledge, and I don't. I'm sorry for anybody who like believes in it. Call me a bad person or whatever. I just don't see the why. And let's go back to that conversation I had when we were in Comms Reboot, where I gave the story and the example of that in the developer community, they routinely put in the prompt buried in the code that they develop so that future developers, coders, or readers can see, like, oh, this is the prompt they used
Mhm.
to write this code. As communicators, the room acknowledged we would never do that. But yet we're cool writing things for other people and letting them represent our words, but somehow AI is different for us. It just feels very hypocritical.
It's brought me back to the conversation we had the other week about the AI and cultural intelligence sort of framework, and how you can bring those 2 elements together. To that felt much more practical in terms of how we can apply it and learn, versus the I pledge my allegiance. And I don't know why it's called Venice. I really should have looked that up before we had this conversation.
I just feel like if you need to make a pledge to say you're ethical, I've got some concerns.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the same way I feel about companies that have honesty as one of their values. I feel like that should be a base level given. That's not a value that should stand out
I
in
meant
any.
so
Yeah.
after I left Comms Reboot, I spoke at PRSA's Impact 25 conference in New York, and I was on stage and I used that exact example we're talking about company values and how
Yeah.
bland and boring they are. And if honesty is one of them, that you have to call that out to your employees, you've got bigger issues because you're
Yes.
hiring the wrong people. If you're like, wait a minute, Jenny, our value says be honest. So don't go around lying to people. Unbelievable.
Yeah, mad. Right, that wraps up our articles. So on to our freakouts for the week. What are you freaking out about?
Jenny, I can't believe I've waited this long to bring this one up, but I saw it in so many emails and different types of emails in the last week. And I forget what the phenomenon is called. It's like once you see something that recognize, you start
Yeah,
seeing it everywhere because
yeah.
your mind is kind of dialed in. I forget what that is called. People that begin emails with, I hope this email finds you well, dot, dot, dot. What are we doing? What are we doing? Are we that robotic? Are we that uncreative? What is it? What's the alternative? I hope this email finds you unwell. Like, I don't know what you're looking for with this sentence. Just get to it. Just tell me what you need. And if you don't know how to begin an email, maybe you do need AI to help you write emails. Because I guarantee you, ChatGPT or Claude would probably say, do not start an email with, I hope this finds you well. Because as soon as I read that, I'm out. Because I know it's like when you walk up to somebody, hey, how are you doing? Good, good. How are you? It's this routine nature that
Mm.
means nothing. They actually don't hope the email finds you in any way, shape, or form other than opening the email. That's the only thing they're hoping for. And it's such a lack of creativity and personality that it drives me crazy.
Now, question, did you see this phrase in sort of like sales or like automated
All
emails?
of it.
Was it in
All of
just
it.
like, I would email you tomorrow and say, which I'm going to now. Hope this email finds you
I'm
well.
going to go back and search and see if you ever did include
Oh, I
that.
don't think I ever have.
Because
I don't think I ever
because
have.
I don't delete any
No,
emails too, by the way,
no.
Jenny.
But I also, because I'm a bit like you and I kind of get straight to the point. So when I'm emailing, I often get straight to the point and then I have to go above my straight to the point and say, I hope you're doing okay in this heat wave, or I hope you had a good weekend,
But at
or
least that's
something like,
timely
but
and
it has to be
personal.
relevant. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I've
not
never
this
done.
just
No.
generic blanket message that I've seen it in people promoting webinars. What? What?
Yeah.
So stop. So
No.
that, you know what? That's the pledge. That's the pledge. I want I,
Yeah.
I want people to make. I don't know what
Okay.
we're going to call that, the frequency pledge.
Okay. We're gonna have to
That
start
that
this.
people are going to we're going to start a whole bunch of commitments in here, Jenny. Number 1 is I pledge that I will never send or endorse an email that begins with, I hope this finds you well. That's got to be number 1
That's
on the
number one.
frequency
That's
pledge.
number one. You're
And
making me
reach out. I want to know what everyone else's frequency pledges are, but that's number 1 on the list.
I love that. It's making me think of Room 101. Have you ever had that over there?
Mm-mm.
So there used to be a thing over here called Room 101, and it was a show where people would bring the things they want to put into Room 101, and it's basically things they want to like get in the bin. and and then they'd have a discussion as like comedians about whether or not it was allowed to go into Room 101 or not, and they'd sort of pull a big lever. I feel like for you this is a
This is
Room
it.
101 thing. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like the frequency
absolutely.
pledge. I feel like I can just see it now. I can see the creativity of
We'll
what that pledge
chisel it. It'll be
looks like.
chiseled in
Yeah.
stone, Jenny.
We'll just carry that with us when we get together.
Oh, it's going to be shiny and like gold leafed and have like sparkles to
Love it.
it. Oh,
Love it. Love
it's going
it.
to be gorgeous.
Well, my freak out isn't very soapboxy today, but I'm listening to a book about entrepreneurship, and I was listening to it on a walk to a friend's the other day, as I'm still trying to get through the however many hours it is, and it was talking about extremism linked to business and data, but it was talking about don't believe the extremists that say you should never have any data, and don't believe the extremists that say that you should always rely on your gut to make decisions. You've got to kind of find that happy medium. And it's just kind of stayed with me about the extreme nature of our world a little bit, and how there can be really strong views over here and really strong views over here, and how we have to find our own space in that. But it just got me thinking about the data conversation we've had before. And I think I was having it online as well about you don't always need to have data to make decisions. And I just wanted to leave with that sort of thought of it doesn't have to be extreme. And to your point earlier, it doesn't need to be or, it can be and or. There's different ways of doing it. And I think sometimes we feel like we have to be either over here or over here. And actually, you don't want to be in either of those. You've got to find that sort of happy medium. So that's what was in my mind this week.
Yeah, I would say you don't believe extremists, period. Because we know anything is never all one direction or all the other. So if people say like, well, again, we're getting into we're going to add this to the frequency pledge too. When people on LinkedIn are like, everyone's always asking me, they're not. So anytime you see the word always or never, those are extreme situations. So it's never always. Something is never dead. We always see like, oh, intranets are dead. Email is dead. They're not. That's the extreme position. So you're right. It's a great thing for all of us to think about. We know it's always in the middle, but we're drawn to extreme stances from a provocative standpoint. So just a good lesson learned for all of us there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's it from us this week. So thank you for joining us. All of the articles and Instagram posts that have inspired this conversation are in the show notes. And please don't forget to rate and review after you've listened. And make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss another episode. And please pass this along to someone that you think would enjoy listening or watching, because we're also on YouTube. Thank you to Poet Ollie for contributing the music to the show, and we'll be back next week with more news, insights, and opinions about everything comms and leadership in workplaces today. Keep tuning in and turning up.